I met some of you guys when I was working the room, but I didn't meet everybody. And I have this thing that I do because I like to feel like I know people before I talk to them. It helps me to keep you awake. So if you would, on the count of three, everyone just sort of say their name. 1, 2, 3. Hello to everybody. Before I start, I want to thank LinkedIn for inviting me out. Speaking at a LinkedIn event was actually on my bucket list, so I can now die happily that I can check that off. And also, I want to give a shout out to my Randstad peeps who aren't here, who wanted to be here. One love. All right. So, all that being said, let me start. Hopefully, I got this going. Aha. Okay. I was for big data before I was against it. Now, I want to start off first by saying something that I think is fairly obvious, especially to this room. Recruiting ain't easy. It ain't easy. A lot of times, recruiters are like, oh, please, recruiting gods. Please, 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 let me find the perfect candidate. Let him have, or she or he have the right amount of experience. Let them work 5 minutes down the street from the location. And above all, please let them accept the pay that we're willing to give. All right. Why is it that so many recruiters are posting and praying nowadays more so than any other? Well, if someone were to ask me on the street, hey, Jim, why are so many recruiters posting and praying so much now than ever before? Well, I would put my shoulders back, make great eye contact, and with every bit of confidence I can muster, I would tell them. I don't know. But I would be kidding. I would be kidding. There are actually two reasons why I want to go into why I think there's a lot more posting and praying these days than ever before. Here's some stats I want to share with you. On a global perspective, well, there you go. Issue number one is talent shortage. Hashtag irony, especially in this day and age of so many people out of work. Looking at the world stage, recruiters all over the world, two big reasons why there is a talent shortage. One is that there aren't enough qualified people. People that I call those who have the skills to pay the bills. Not enough of those. And those who do have the skills to pay the bills, well, they're not really applying for the different jobs that are out there. I want to show you also another study that I found too from this site here from work, and it showed that the U.S. has a skills shortage, especially in terms of literacy and bottom in the skills concerning with numbers and technology, which is really eye-opening to me, which is kind of surprising in a lot of ways. And then here's another report from the World Economic Forum that showed basically that although there is so much of a talent skill gap, as the baby boomers retire, there aren't enough millennials taking on certain roles. So even though as baby boomers retire, a lot of millennials are not taking on certain jobs, which means that the talent gap is going to continue to get wider. Also, parenthetically, if you have a teenager in the house and if they're not interested in healthcare or IT, which are really great fields, plumbing is a really lucrative field right now. You might laugh, you might giggle, I know I do, but you think it's hard to find a plumber now, it's going to be harder. And whoever has that kind of trade would do really well. Just want to throw that out there because I know a lot of teenagers. All right. Number two reason why a lot of recruiters are doing a lot of posting and praying is retention issues. Here is an article from August 2012, which says, hey, when it comes to job hopping around different millennials, it's just normal. It's just what we do. How many people have noticed that, just out of curiosity? That millennials in the job hopping is just, yeah? All right, so this isn't news to you. Okay, all right. Well, this was actually from August 2012. A more recent article from January 2014 shows that a recent survey says that workers say they plan to change jobs this year. That's from January. Another article, a little bit more recent, from May, says 51% of employees are active job seekers. If I go to another, it might say 100%, so I stopped looking after that point. So my question to you guys is, are you feeling the pain of the staffing storm? That's not a rhetorical question. Yes or no? 1, 2, 3. Are you feeling the pain? Yes. Yes, I know you are, because there's a recent survey that I also found around this question. It was produced by ERE. And they asked, I don't know if you guys have seen this already. How many people have ever seen the ERE survey? Not many? Okay, good. Only a couple people. So they did a job satisfaction survey. They sent it out to recruiters and to different hiring managers and so forth and said, hey, what do you feel, how do you feel about the recruiting field overall. And they said pretty much, don't feel too good. It's hard finding people now, and we don't see it getting any better anytime soon in the coming year. So what are companies doing about it? Retention issues, finding people that are qualified. And of course, people that are qualified are not really applying. If someone were to ask me, Jim, considering all that kind of stuff, what are companies doing to combat these issues? Well, I would put my shoulders back, look you square in the eye, and with every bit of confidence I can muster, I would say, I don't know. But as before, I would be kidding. The big thing that companies are doing is big data. What I like to call big data baby, and just because it'll make me laugh, on the count of three, can I get everybody to say big data baby? 1, 2, 3. Big data baby. We can do better. Let's try one more time. 1, 2, 3. Big data baby. Thank you. I just want to see if I can get y'all to do that. All right. Big data is all the rage. All the cool kids are talking about it. Not only is big data the rage right now, it's also the future. A lot of people are talking about big data. So what is big data? Well, a couple of definitions. One is the official definition, and one is what I call my own personal definition. This is the official definition from Francis Diebold, who originally coined the phrase big data. He's a professor out at University of Pennsylvania. Now, I don't know Francis Diebold personally. Does anybody here know him personally? Just guessing. Anybody online know him? If you know him, tweet him, whatever. I imagine how he talks in my brain because he's a big-time professor. So this is how I imagine him saying this definition. Big data refers to the explosion in the quantity and sometimes quality of available and potentially relevant data, largely the result of recent and unprecedented advancements in data recording and storage technology. Oh, quite right. That's how I imagine him saying that. And that is actually the official, original definition of big data, but my definition is a little bit more pithy. Big data is a whole bunch of information. Now, when you have a whole bunch of information, what does it matter if you don't know what to do with it? Big data has to tell you a story, or otherwise it's just useless. I want to show you a couple of companies that I think are really, really good at managing big data. These are what I call some masters of big data. One is Target. How many people are big-time shoppers of Target, or Target, as it's commonly referred to at times? Did you know that Target has a pregnancy prediction score? Yes. Some people knew that, yep. Some people who do not know that, this is what Target does. Target monitors your shopping habits. So if you buy a bunch of, let's say, scented lotion and a bunch of unscented soap, for example, and people buy soap and lotion on a regular basis anyway, so I hope they do, right? But if you start buying a bunch of it in a large quantity, along with, say, a bunch of cotton balls, calcium and zinc, different other kind of vitamin stuff that pregnant women buy, then that will ring a bell inside of Target's database and say, this person is buying a lot of materials that pregnant women tend to buy. Pregnant women in their second trimester tend to buy these things. That being the case, let's send them some baby coupons. Or let's send them baby coupons. So you can buy baby cheap. No, let's send them some diaper coupons. Not that they're selling children. Some diaper coupons or stuff like that. You know what I'm saying. So they would do that. And actually, it was a funny story. This article that's cited here on the picture, there was an angry father who called and complained to Target because he was receiving a lot of coupons for baby-related products. And so he went down to the Target and shook his finger in their face, saying, "Are you trying to encourage my teenage daughter to get pregnant?" Obviously, it struck a nerve at home. And so they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry. We're so apologetic, sir. We're not going to do this anymore. We apologize." A few days later, Target manager, a credit to their customer service, they followed back up with the father sometime later, said, "Hey, just touching base with you to make sure you're still good. We value you as a Target customer." And Dad said, "Well, you know what? I have to owe you an apology because my daughter was pregnant." Target figured out that his daughter was pregnant before he did. Hashtag awkward in the room. So what Target does now differently when that happens, they send child pregnancy-related coupons in addition to a bunch of other stuff in a flyer. So they changed the practice. It used to be you would just get pregnancy-related coupons. Now you may get pregnancy-related coupons along with a bunch of other things as well. So it's not to have a repeat kind of situation that happened with this dad. Just sort of FYI, especially if you have a teenage daughter in the house. Okay. Another company that I really admire for how they're using data is Netflix. Who's a fan of this show, House of Cards? It rocks, right? You seen the second season? Yeah, it's good. They're working the third season now, but I digress. Okay, so House of Cards is for those who don't know, House of Cards is a show on the Netflix service, and it's a political thriller starring Kevin Spacey. Okay, I'm starting to geek out. Let me get over that. Okay, so it's a hit show on Netflix, right? Now, when Kevin Spacey came to approach Netflix and said, hey, let's talk about producing this show on your channel, Netflix says, okay, we'll get back to you. Let me crunch some numbers. So what Netflix did was they went into their database and they looked at their subscribers. And they said, okay, X number of subscribers really like political thrillers based on their viewing habits inside of our database. X number of subscribers tend to like Kevin Spacey movies. They give it high stars. Okay, let's look at the people that will be directing these episodes inside of Kevin Spacey's show. Okay, these directors and producers who will be producing these episodes, they produce other projects that happen to be in Netflix as well. How are they doing? Oh, okay, these shows are also doing well. Now, House of Cards is originally a British show. It originally came out in the 80s, and it still has a cult following. So they said, okay, so people years later are still sort of watching the old reruns of this show. So if he's going to do a revamp of an old show that's still somewhat popular overseas, and it's starring Kevin Spacey, and its directors and producers have produced content that is still popular on our network, nothing's 100% for sure, but it's a pretty good bet. Okay, we'll go ahead and invest in the House of Cards. Long story short, it became a huge hit, won all these awards and everything. And people are like, Netflix, how are you doing this? How are you picking all these wonderful shows? Because they have other shows inside their network too, like Orange is the New Black, Lilyhammer, a bunch of other shows as well. And they have also become hits. And everyone's like, wow, Netflix, you have like the golden touch. Not necessarily. Netflix has the data, and they know how to leverage it. Now, Netflix and Target aren't the only companies, of course, that are leveraging big data. A lot of companies have been using big data for years. It just wasn't necessarily a big buzzword in our industry for a while, but people have used big data to, of course, predict early weather warning patterns so they can tell you when tornadoes are coming, that kind of thing. Healthcare market companies are using big data to figure out when you're going to have a heart attack. If you've had a heart attack before, they can keep tabs on you and your data. They can tell you the likelihood of when you would have a heart attack, again, if you continue to keep doing certain things. There are also companies that can take big data from GPS and can sort of map out traffic data so they can know, okay, this is where we should place a new road or widen a road, or this is where we should have our red lights pause longer or have the green lights go longer, that kind of thing. They also can predict credit card fraud. So big data has been around since at least 2000 when Francis Diebold first gave his rather good definition of the term. So many industries have been embracing big data for a while, but HR was really, really slow in embracing what big data can do. But eventually, they hooked up. You know I have a teenager in the house when I say things like hooked up. All right, so the guy on the right, that's big data. Say, yeah, baby. And, and the woman is HR. And so they've been looking at each other longingly for a while, and they finally said, you know what, let's just do this. Let's stop talking about it. Let's go ahead and get together. So that's what they did. So I did some research I've been reading about, because one thing you know about me is that I'm a bit of a geek. I don't know if you picked up on that, right? I like to read and research stuff, right? So I was wondering, who were among some of the companies that were really taking big data and HR to the next level early on, the early adopters, the pioneer of this? And I'm just sort of curious to see what you guys think. Name a company you think was on the cutting edge of putting big data and HR together. Monster. No. Yeah. They may, I don't know. Yes. Google. Good guess. Anyone else? Apple? That's a good guess. No. Okay. Actually, you know what? you may be right. It's better for me to say, in my research, this is the company that I found was an early adopter. Maybe you're right. Maybe Monster's right. Maybe Apple is right. I don't know. I didn't see any research that supported that. I did see research that supported her over there in the back. Google. Google came out early, pow, knocking it out the park as far as big data and HR. They made their debut with this controversial thing called the workforce prediction algorithm. Came out in 2009. What this algorithm did was, it looked at data and it looked at other magical, mystical things that Google does. And it says, according to our magical, mystical algorithm, we predict that you will leave the company in 3 months. Now, if you're going to leave the company in 3 months, should I really consider you for promotion? If you're going to leave the company in 3 months, should I really invest training in you? If you're really going to leave in 3 months, according to our magic algorithm, aren't you really dead man walking? As you can imagine, it was a little controversial when it came out. And people were scratching their heads. There were some like, ah. Now, I don't know if they're still doing it. I know I read about that from 2009. But what I do know that still happens to this day is that because of this experiment, maybe other experiments like it, they created what was called a people analytics team. And it's made up of data miners, psychologists, and MBAs. And their whole mantra is all people decisions are based on data and analytics. So when it comes to them making any type of people-related, HR-related decision, they go to the big data in the sky. And they base their decisions on that. They had some early successes, still having successes. I'm going to show you a couple successes that I found out online. One was Project Oxygen. And basically what they did was they looked at a bunch of their managers. And they said, okay, these managers over here, they're not performing all that great. They're like, kind of iffy. They could do better. They could do a lot better, actually. All right? And then they had these managers over here that were just knocking it out the park, going, oh, we love you, mean it. Mwah. Keep doing what you're doing. And so they said, well, we want all our managers to be like these over here. So what they did was they analyzed the data. They took the characteristics of what the good managers were doing. They looked at what the bad managers are doing. And then they said, hey, bad managers, do this, what the good managers are doing. And based on their data, they improved their productivity by 75%. I don't know what the criteria was, what made a good manager or bad manager, whatever, but that's what I read about. Another thing that they use big data, their team, an early success that the people analytics team had, was that they squashed a lot of internal rumors. It was at one point a somewhat believed truth inside the company, was that unless you worked on the Google search engine, unless you worked on Gmail or YouTube or some other high-profile project at Google, if you're working on those kind of projects, then you're going to be in line for a promotion because that's a high-visibility thing. And if you work virtual or on some other project that people don't know about, your chances of promotion are, maybe. Who knows? It could happen. So that was the complaint that was going on. The people analytics team got on it, crunched the data, used their magical, mystical algorithms and whatnot, and they walked away saying, you know what? It's not the case. It does not matter if you work on the shiny big project like YouTube or if you worked on Google Buzz, for the other geeks out there online who remember Google Buzz. All right, doesn't matter. What matters is how well your hiring managers, how well your manager gave you feedback. And so the people analytics teams, they work diligently to solve problems like that and have been doing it early on. But if you think Google is the only one doing this, no. A lot of companies are doing it. I'm going to show you a few more examples. One is Luxottica Group. Who many people have heard of Luxottica? Yeah? They make these real fancy shades that I can't afford. Like these Kim Kardashian, these huge, right? Let me know, big, huge Kim Kardashian shades, right? They had an issue, an internal issue. And the people inside were complaining about time to hire, time to fill. And it was like, okay, somebody up top said, why does it take 96 days to fill these jobs with an external candidate? 96 days, come on. And so the hiring managers were like, it's not us. Those recruiters are sending us bad people. So we need to get on them. And the recruiter was like going, it's not us. It's the hiring manager taking their time, dragging their feet on the people we're sending them. So the company looked at the data, looked it over, did their magical, mystical thing. It turns out that it wasn't the recruiters, yay, that were slowing the process down, but it was actually The hiring managers. I would love to have been in on that meeting. So, so they made some little tweaks here and there, and they changed their time to fill from 96 days down to 46 days. 50 days, which was a great time savings. Everybody would love to save 50 days out of their time to fill, I'm sure. But one way they were able to make that argument and get it done was because they had the data to back up what they were trying to do. Another company that's using big data, Capital One. Capital One creates automated data reports on employee attrition, headcount, promotions. They analyze the characteristics of the rock stars inside their company, and they do their version of a similar search that LinkedIn does. You know how on LinkedIn you can pull up a profile, click similar search, and find people just like it? Well, Capital One is doing something similar as well. They're saying, okay, look at the data of the people who are really the rock stars here, and let's find people similar to that out there when you're recruiting. Another company that's also using big data in an interesting way, I think, is Cisco, S-Y-S-C-O, not to be confused with C-I-S-C-O or B-I-N-G-O, if that's the case may be. And what they do is they have been monitoring the satisfaction level of their truck driver delivery associates, and they're keeping up with them saying, hey, how's your day going? How are you feeling? You feeling good about the company today? Are you happy? Can we do anything to make your job a little easier? You know, can I send you some flowers? You know, something like that. They're keeping tabs on them, trying to keep the people happy. And it paid off because they were able to increase their retention levels from 65% to 85%, which is great because that meant $50 million in savings in terms of training and hiring related costs. So that was very, very good. So when I see all that, I said, hey, big data is cool. Everybody say big data is cool. Big data is cool. Yes. I thought big data was cool too. I really did. But I kept reading because I'm a bit of a geek like that. And I wasn't just satisfied with just that. So I kept researching and reading. And I came across, you know, these nature shows where you see like the explorers, they find animals and they put a tracking collar on them, and then they have some kind of documentary team follow the animals around. So this is the mama cub, and she's out there taking care of the cubs while the father cub is out hunting down the dinner. And look, he left the bathroom toilet up, and now they're fighting, or something like that, right? And so I saw that, and I said, this is interesting, because my daughter likes animal shows. And so I was watching this with her, and then I said, wouldn't it be funny if somebody, you know, tagged some workers and put them out in their environment to see how they interact? And then I found someone who was actually doing that. There was this, Huffington Post has a live show called HuffPost Live. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you know it or not, but they have a video show called HuffPost Live. And I was watching an interview with this guy, Ben Weber, who's the president and CEO of Sociometric Solutions. And he was talking about something he had done with one of his clients, which was Bank of America. Bank of America had a call center, and they wanted to, being who they are, they wanted to increase efficiency among the workers. They wanted to know, was it a boon or was it a good thing that their workers interacted with each other so much? Or was it better if they would just be quiet and smile and dial, right? So they said, Sociometric, can you help us figure this out? And they said, sure, we can. So Sociometric gave them these sensors. You know those little tags you have that you hang from your belt or whatever, and you swipe in and walk into an office, like a little sensor, about the size of an iPhone, right? And the workers all had these sensors, like little tags, that's iPhones, like the size of an iPhone. And what these tags did was it kept track of when you were at your desk and when you weren't at your desk. It kept track of when you were talking to other people and who you were talking to. It kept track of your tone of voice because you can keep track of certain data about how well you speak to someone, loud, that kind of thing. And after so long of measuring this type of data in the workplace, they came away with it saying, you know what? The more people interacted with each other face to face, the higher the productivity was in the room. So the workforce productivity actually improved, I think like 10%. And I said, oh, okay, that's cool. I can see how that can be interesting to HR to see how well they can increase productivity and efficiency. But I thought it was kind of weird. Is it just me? But you think that was kind of weird if they're tagging you and you're monitoring your bathroom breaks and whatnot? I thought, okay, this is interesting. Being the geek that I am, I kept reading because I wanted to know, is there anything else they're doing that's sort of like this National Geographic thing? And there was another company that I found out they did work with. It was a company called Cubis Pharmaceuticals. And Cubis Pharmaceuticals, like Bank of America, they wanted to know how efficient their people are and could the efficiency be improved. And so they gave them the same kind of sensors that you would use, like I described before, but they added to it. They also merged the data from them walking around the office with email data. They also asked them from time to time, or gave them a survey, said, hey, how do you feel about the company today? How do you feel about your work today? You feeling good? Is this a good day? You getting things done? That kind of thing. So they merged all that kind of data together. And then the end result was that they noticed that more face-to-face interaction improved productivity all around. And then realizing that, the company said, you know what, since face-to-face interaction is improving productivity, let's go ahead and revamp our cafeteria. Let's give it better lighting, better furniture, higher grade of food, and encourage people to take breaks at the same time instead of one-offs. And they did, and productivity improved significantly. All very cool, but still had me kind of weirded out when I know that you're being tagged and monitored as you sit down, walk around, that kind of thing. And in the interview, somebody had asked them, well, dude, is that legal to do that? And I don't want to, I'm paraphrasing, so I don't know exactly his word for word, but he said it's not illegal for a company to monitor their assets. Just like they can monitor your email if you're using their system or their computers. It's not illegal to do this. So what I want to ask each one of you, when you get back to your offices, and for those live streaming, look right now under your chair and see if you see this, this sensor, this little device. That's produced by a company called Herman Miller. And what this device does is it measures the amount of warmth from your posterior. Some are warmer than others. And then it also measures movement and whatnot. And if you see this device underneath your chair, you could be monitored for office efficiency purposes. How does that feel? To make you feel weird? Yeah? Just throwing it out there. I'm curious, just a quick gauge in the room. Show of hand, who would feel weird if they went to their desk and they saw this under their chair? Yeah? For people in the live stream, it's most of the people in the room. And if you're people on live stream, if you see one of these on your chair, please let me know. I'll be so curious to see that. So, before big data was really, really cool. And then I started reading this and I started thinking, big data is kind of scary. Big brother looking over your shoulder. Although good intentions to improve office efficiency, it still had me feeling kind of weird. So part of me was saying, okay, Jim, you got enough, stop reading. But I couldn't stop because I'm a geek like that. So I kept reading. And I started finding what I thought was, I won't say disturbing, I'll just say interesting. I started seeing articles that had a theme along these lines, kind of political, right? I started seeing articles like this that says, big data could create an era of big discrimination. I said, really? I looked around some more. I found an article that said, big data is our generation's civil rights issue, and we don't even know it. I said, really? Look some more. Why civil rights groups are warning against big data. That big data is evil. Run, run, danger, danger. I was like, really? So I read through all these different articles, and they were basically coming down saying the same thing. And they pointed out a couple of different examples that I kept seeing over and over and over. And this is one, this was really, really interesting, right? It was this guy, I forget his first name, but his last name was Johnson. And he was, he had great credit card, he had great credit record, right? He had like the credit record of the gods. Like, it's like, wow, I can't believe this is really your credit score, because I haven't really seen one that's perfect, you know. He was really, really good, right? And so he went shopping in a really interesting part of town. We'll make up a name. We'll call it De La Ghetto, right? So he was shopping in De La Ghetto, right? And he bought whatever he bought in De La Ghetto. And so when his credit card statement came back, he noticed something really different. He said, hey, my credit limit is really restricted, more so than it was before. Hey, Amex, this isn't right. What's up with this? Oh, well, our data shows that people who frequently buy out of this particular area in De La Ghetto, they have bad credit. So since you shopped there, you must have bad credit. So we're going to ding you on your credit. Not because of your credit history, which is, of course, of the gods previously, but because you shopped in a certain area. Let that sink in, because that freaked me out. Now, when I read this, the guy naturally was ticked off, to put it mildly, and he's fighting them in court, and I don't know where it is right now, because the time of the article, it just sort of recently happened, so I don't know how it ended up. I like to think it has a happy ending, but that's where it is right now. There's another example that was pointed out in these articles, too. And in this example, it was some civil rights leaders were, along with some lawyers from the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, they went up to Washington, D.C., and complained to some congressmen saying that a certain company was being discriminatory against their workers, and they wanted a response. And in reading between the lines and knowing our background in recruiting, this is how I speculate what happened, right? And this is based on the different articles, too, because, okay, this is what happened. Company was trying to fill some butts and seats in a certain location, right? But the company was having a huge attrition rate. It was almost like 50%. It was some really huge number. Couldn't keep anybody there. It wasn't the management. They looked into it. They couldn't figure out what it was. They looked at the big data and they said, you know what? People who live in this area, they tend to stay because the commute is short. Everyone else we're recruiting for, they're over here somewhere. They take the job, but after driving back and forth in this traffic for 90 minutes, they're like, forget this. I'm just, no. So they tend to drop off. So why don't we just save ourselves some trouble and just look for people who, in this area, and then we'll keep them, and everything will be happy. They did that. Attrition levels dropped. They were happy, but they got into trouble because people in this area were an affluent kind of neighborhood, and there wasn't much diversity there at all. But everybody over here, all diversity, if you can read between the lines. And that's where the issue came from. So that's where they were going, big data is bad because the company, they complained to the company, come say, hey, we're only doing this based on data. We're not trying to be unfair. So you might say, Jim, it's all very interesting, but what does that have to do with HR today? Glad you asked me. Uncle Sam loves big data. I don't know if you heard that. They love big data. They especially love it as it pertains to health care. Just throwing it out there. Not being political, just saying, right? And the White House is saying, you know what? Big data is a big deal. We're hearing a lot of noise and hubbub about it. Let's do a special report, and we'll see what we need to do about this to protect our citizens, more or less is what their stance is. So when I read that, I said, interesting. Maybe I should start worrying. And as I read into it, being the geek that I am, I found out there are about two things I really need to worry about when it comes to recruiting with big data. Just in case you needed more to worry about overall. One big thing you need to worry about when it comes to recruiting with big data is unintended consequences. Hashtag irony. This is a picture of some brave firemen up in New Haven, Connecticut. Is that Connecticut? Right? All right. Up in New Haven. And somebody in HR said, you know what? I'm looking around here and I don't see any diversity. This is not good. Let's see what we can do to change this up so we can better reflect the community that we are serving. So they said, okay, to be fair, let's just have a test. And we'll make sure everybody takes this test. And no matter how you score, where you score in the test will determine whether or not we'll put you in the pool for leadership consideration. I said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, let's do that. That's good. Sound good? Would it sound good to y'all? Yeah? Sounds fair, right? Yeah, okay. So he put the test out there, And I don't remember the numbers right off, but it was like, let's just say 10 is a number. All right? None of the people who scored or who scored high enough to be considered for leadership were white. One was Hispanic. And so the company said, that didn't work, let's throw that out. And everyone who scored, who won, the Hispanic and the non-white, they were like, hey, back that up. And rightly so, in my opinion. And they said, no, don't change, you can't change the rules in the middle of the game. We'll see you in court. It took them to court. Went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, too bad, so sad, your tests represented a disparate impact, so we're going to have to throw out the results. I said, at least buy them dinner and a movie first. That's just me, not being political, right? All that to say, no matter how well-intentioned that test was and how, at first glance, we all thought, that's fair, you got to be on the lookout for unintended consequences. Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to big data and recruiting is more government regulation, because it's on the way. The White House has been looking into, as I mentioned earlier, big data is a thing they like. They love it, especially in healthcare. They had people researching big data, try to see how it could affect Americans overall. And they came away with this report, which is a big list of recommendations, right? There are a few things in this list that really caught my eye. And the date of this is, what's the date? Yeah, May 1st. So this is really new. No laws are on the, it's not even at the bill process yet. This is stuff they're talking about, stuff they're debating, stuff they're thinking about. One was they wanted to advance the Consumer's Privacy Bill of Rights to provide better information and standards for protecting privacy. So a Consumer Bill of Rights. I thought, okay, makes sense. I feel good about it. I like to see that. Second was to pass legislation for protecting data from breaches. Right now, that's just common sense. If you don't protect your data, you're going to lose your customers. Don't really necessarily need a law about it, but potentially there may be a law that says if you're a company holding somebody's data and you don't do certain guidelines, you might get pinged a real big fine. That's okay. I think it's common sense, but it might be a law that says you have to have common sense and protect your customers' data, right? The third thing that caught my attention the most, where it says prevent discrimination based on automated profiling of race or other sensitive characteristics. Focus on the term automated profiling. And I thought, okay, so it may be illegal one day to pull data on an automated basis. And also, what is sensitive characteristic, which is totally ambiguous? Is it the school you went to? Is it your personal interests? Who knows? But the automated profiling thing caught my attention because if you're going to do any kind of big data recruiting related initiative where you're analyzing data, you're going to do that some kind of way. You're going to pull information out of some computer or some system. You're not going to look at profiles of 200 or 500 or 1,000 people one by one, and you're not going to do that. It's going to be automated in some fashion, in some way. So they had me wondering, okay, all the stuff that, the examples I showed you before, that Capital One, Cisco, and others were doing, and that I applaud, by the way, would it one day be considered illegal? I don't know. I know they're talking about it, so we'll see. I just thought that was interesting. So the question comes up, so Jim, how do I get the benefits of big data while avoiding all of the potential negative consequences? Well, if you were to ask me on the street, you say, Jim, how do you use big data but you get away with all these negative possibilities that could happen out there? I'll put my shoulder back, look you right in the eye, and with all the confidence I can muster, I would say, I don't know. And I would say I don't know because nobody knows for sure, because it's all new territory. Certain laws that are on the way aren't even on the books yet. Not even the bill stage, but it's coming. So what do you do? Well, I have a few suggestions, but I can't say this definitely because, as I said, it's all in the planning stage. One, big data is not good or evil. It's just a tool. Use it. It's certainly not illegal to do some of the examples that I showed you before. One day it might be, but it's not now. Take advantage of it. Second suggestion, be transparent about the data you're collecting. That's just going to help you with your customers anyway. Let people know you're collecting this data and what you're collecting this data for. Set clear rules about what it'll be used for so there's no surprises from the end user on down the road. And then keep a constant visual for unintended consequences. Brainstorm every possible thing of what could possibly go wrong and plan for it, because you never know. What sounds so great and so fair could come back and bite you in the boom boom, as my daughter would say. Now, if this whole thing about big data has your interest, you may want to subscribe to this newsletter that's produced by Data and Society. It's called the Council for Big Data Ethics and Society. It doesn't give you information about big data from a recruiting or HR perspective, just big data overall. But as you subscribe to and read some of the articles, you'll say, okay, I can see how that could possibly apply to what I'm doing. Make sense? Okay. If you are still awake and want to talk to me even further, you can connect with me through LinkedIn. And for those who are watching this on live stream as well, all the things that I cited, all the articles, all the research, all the geeky stuff I was looking at, if you go to this link right here, you can get a list of all the articles that you can read and double check everything I said. I put it out there for your convenience. That's it. We got, I think, 3 minutes of